Hello everyone, welcome to the Jacksonville History Show. I'm Harry Reagan. Later, we'll visit the early days of Florida tourism, but first an update on the Historical Society's efforts to acquire Old St. Luke's. With us, Jerry Spinks, President of the Historical Society, and Emily Lisska, Executive Director. Welcome.
Well, hello, Harry.
Glad to be here.
So, Jerry, I guess we would have to say good news at this point.
Absolutely. We've got really good news. You know, not only after 80 years does the Society have an opportunity to have a permanent home and a place to consolidate its collection and archives, but we have applied for and the City Council has approved a matching grant of $250,000. We have to earn it dollar for dollar. But when we get it all together, it will apply toward the purchase price of this building.
And Harry, if I may, I'd like to add right away, those $250,000 of grant money from the City of Jacksonville, that's money that can only be spent for a historic preservation project. So this isn't optional. It's not as though it's available to the general fund.
Exactly right, because I was going to, at some point, discuss the difficulty of fighting for preservation dollars at City Hall, because you're competing with things that, after all, are public safety and so forth. And this is money that could not be used to pay firefighters or cops.
That's right. It had been set aside by ordinance about a decade ago through the efforts of then Councilman Matt Carlucci. So the money was there, and in fact, the Jacksonville Historical Society sort of stood back thinking that it was going to go to a major downtown project, and that project hasn't materialized, and we are certainly a major project. Of St. Luke's and the adjoining 1888 casket factory, you've got a National Register site, another historic building, and this will finally give the Jacksonville an ample space to keep the rare documents and treasures, really, that belong, in essence, to the citizens of Jacksonville via the stewardship of the Jacksonville Historical Society.
And we may see a picture in a little while of the move.
Okay.
You've already started moving archives. But the archives were in several locations.
Oh, indeed.
Jacksonville University, where have they been?
Been growing and collecting. We rented space about a block from our headquarters, Old St. Andrews, which a lot of people will identify with that wonderful old National Register church across the street from the Veterans Memorial Arena. So we had 6 office spaces about a block from there, and space at Jacksonville University. They've been so generous to us for roughly 45 years, and then even on site at our own facility. So we were very spread out, and it's time to consolidate. It's time to actually archive all the collection in the proper method.
Well, and it's time to see a picture of this property while we talk some more about it, Jerry. It's not just the old hospital, Old St. Luke's Hospital, but it's also a building adjacent to it, which people find ironic, I guess, but it was a casket factory.
And I'll put my finger at that casket factory.
Was for many, many years the Florida Casket Company. That was a use. It was very, very ironic. Charlie Bennett became involved in this, Harry, in the mid-'70s when these 2 buildings were to be demolished. The hospital, although small now, represents a center section of what was once a very long building, went to both the north and to the south. And Mr. Bennett and others, Dr. O.E. Harrell and others, went together, raised the money, and saved the center section.
And what, to the extent that there is a definite plan, what this property?
Well, both Emily and I have really
archives
been working on it like that, but it is primarily a place to consolidate the archives and permit them to be used with the interaction with the community, not only in collecting, but showing people how to collect, having collections presented, etc.
And Emily, it's right on the next block from the long-standing location of the Historical Society, Old St. Andrews.
Only a long block away, so it makes it a very workable facility for people who are active already we're getting very consolidated now. So, of course, our challenge at this point, since we've been offered that grant through the Historic Preservation Fund, is we have to match the grant. So we're eager for those $250,000 we've got to raise
So, Jerry,
in order to get the money.
you're in fundraising mode.
High mode. I'm in gear. We're all in gear, fundraising.
Yeah.
One of the things, though, that also assisted us in qualifying for this grant, the grant is designed to facilitate the restoration and reuse of historic properties. And one of the ways we're reusing this is we're playing a part in the sports complex. We now have 3 legs, 3 stations in the sports complex. We entertain with programs at St. Andrews. We maintain a house museum with the Merrill House Museum.
Next door to Old St. Andrews.
Right there on A. Phillip and Duval. And now, the archives.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the history of this building, the hospital. It was an important building in the history of Jacksonville. Emily?
Absolutely. Well, it was actually built earlier, a little earlier than that, about a decade earlier. The original Old St. Luke's was constructed through the efforts of a group of society women in Jacksonville. We were a tourist destination for the nation in the wintertime back in those days, and there needed to be a place that tourists could be treated when they became ill. A lot of older tourists came here. Old in those days, though, would have been maybe 45, 50 years old, but still. So then the first building burned to the ground almost immediately, and through those same efforts, same ladies, it was rebuilt, and it was there to shepherd the city through the yellow fever epidemic 10 years later. That's correct.
And as Jerry mentioned, it was once a bigger structure than you see there today. And people may not know exactly where we're talking about because it's a little bit off the beaten path, but it's behind the arena. If you drive around the arena, you'll see this magnificent old structure.
Exactly. And I think, too, what people should know, while we are using it currently, using it being Old St. Luke's for an archival repository, those rare documents, treasures, photographs of city history, eventually casket factory, which has about 15,000 square feet, and we certainly could probably fill much of that with records. And then the hospital itself will serve as an interpretive center with a lot of exhibits.
And we have a shot of the way the hospital looks today. I guess that's the back of the hospital. And
Harry, that's the side that faces Hogan's Creek.
Yeah.
And Hogan's Creek and the hospital were very, well, the hospital was very much an aid in the fire of 1901. And the creek saved East Jacksonville and the hospital.
And I think Jerry made an important point. The area that the hospital sits in, today's arena, Old St. Andrews, those were all known, that was all known as the community at one time of East Jacksonville, Fairfield, and of course today people just think of it as part of an extended downtown.
And I want to get another shot here of the casket factory, and I suppose people may be mildly amused by the fact that there's a hospital next door to a casket factory, but we had the yellow fever epidemic, and it may have been, proximity may have been important at that point. But the casket factory, as we just mentioned, has a lot of space for exhibits and so forth.
Joel McKeechin, who works in the planning department and is a historian, has told me that this is probably the oldest existing purpose-built factory in Jacksonville. And because of its very heavy construction of masonry walls and thick beams, it is really very suitable for what we are working for. We probably have somewhere between $750,000 and $1 million worth of funds to raise to properly restore the building.
Yeah,
its next life.
Raising the $250,000 to match the city's money is
purchase price.
That's not the end of the fundraising.
No, we'll be doing it for a long time.
Because there is the money
to incredible home for us.
A Of course, there's not a lot of, the property, both buildings are in fairly good shape.
Right.
But there is the cost of operating them and so forth. And the Historical Society, Emily, has been involved in efforts to save other buildings. This would be a building that the Society's taking a more direct involvement in. But this would have to be one of the big successes in preservation. You'd rank it along with maybe the Prime Osborne and the St. James Building and Florida Theater.
I would, and I think St. Andrews was a huge save, our headquarters now. Merrill House, of course, but this is huge. Old St. Luke's, that's one of the older buildings that's ever been saved in our city. After all, we lost most of our treasured buildings in the Great Fire. Others that we had seemed to go by the wayside. The few that remained after the Great Fire through the decades were torn down and replaced. So this is a real treasure for Jacksonville, Florida. We're lucky to have it, and it is, I mean, a historic building, not just for Jacksonville, but for Florida, and as by its title, National Register, our nation.
The Historical Society, Jerry, has a list of the most endangered buildings, and from time to time reminds people that these buildings may not survive if we don't take care of them. This building would have to be on that list if something weren't happening to save it.
It is. That Ed Booth is the president-elect and is chairman of the Historic Sites Committee, Harry, and he and the committee have very diligently put together that list year after year, and by making use and making this our home, we have made sure that this historic building stays off of that list and serves the community well.
For people who may not know, Emily, you never want to assume that everybody knows everything about the Historical Society. What does it do? Why should someone become a member?
We save the city's history, and we do it a number of ways. We do it through our educational programs, our program speaker series at the Historical Society. We do it by going out and speaking to groups, to school groups and adult groups. We do it through a tour program. We do it through our book publication program. We have marvelous books we published on the history of Jacksonville, still available. We do it through our film series now. We do it through our oral history series that you've been so involved in, Harry. We do it through this show. So those are just a few of the ways. And another way we do it is by saving important buildings. These are all the ways we save our city's history. Saving buildings sometimes being the more expensive and adventuresome. But that's what we do. And of course, the piece of this that the public can become so involved in are just the speaker series. And we get a great turnout to all of our evening programs, typically in the evening, and that's fun for the public and to learn more about the city's history.
And the cost to become a member is not very high. It's
no,
reasonable.
It starts at $35 annually, so it's pretty good. But of course, the most important way we save the city's history and why we want these buildings, other than just this delight of saving them, is we save those important, rare documents and photographs of city history, and that's what's being placed in these buildings.
And Jerry, the whole idea is not to just save a building, but to recycle it and have it used for something, not just sitting there.
Well, that's a key to preservation, historic preservation in an urban community. You can't. This is not a replica of the Mayflower. This is taking history in Jacksonville and using it to serve the current, or us now, and also doing it in a way, and for use in this particular case, to house the documents that people treasure and want to research.
So we want people to stay tuned, visit the website for the latest information, jackshistory.com, and more to come on the acquisition of Old St. Luke's.
I may add, our Historical Society is on the front edge of social media. So we have a Facebook page, and some of the folks in our staff that have been moving their archives into the hospital have photos on that page. So if you would like to see it, there it is.
Right. And Emily's going to move over to this seat for the next segment.
I am, Harry. I'll be back in just a few minutes after a quick break, and I'll be talking with Rosie coast onto Reethes. And Rosie's going to talk about road trips and motels in North Florida in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. So a very interesting and quirky period. So I hope people stay tuned for that.
So stay with us. The Jacksonville History Show continues.
The Jacksonville Historical Society, preserving your city's history, protecting your city's treasures, advocating the restoration of Jacksonville landmarks, archiving a century of historical documents, collecting rare photographs, tens of thousands, creating the Merrill Museum House, piece by piece, restoring Old St. Andrew's Church, receiving Florida Historical Society's top honors, publishing historical books, elegantly crafted, producing video histories, dramatically told, educating our citizens for decades, enlightening the generations to come, sponsoring tonight's special television presentation, and offering you the opportunity to become a part of Jacksonville history. Call 665-0064, visit jackshistory.com, and become a member of the Jacksonville Historical Society, celebrating 80 years serving our community.